Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Shri Shukadeva Goswami said, Maharaj Yudhisthira, the best member of the Bharat dynasty, thus learned everything from the descriptions of Narada Muni. After hearing these instructions, he felt great pleasure from within his heart, and in great ecstasy, love, and affection, he worshipped Lord Krishna. Purport: it is natural that when someone belonging to one's family circle is understood to be very great, one becomes ecstatic in love, thinking, "Oh, such a great personality is our relative." When Sri Krishna, who was already known to the Pandavas, was further described by Narada Muni to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, naturally the Pandavas were amazed, thinking, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is with us as our cousin. Certainly their ecstasy was extraordinary. I'm going to finish the chapter, since there's only 2 verses left in the whole canto. Translation: Narada Muni, being worshipped by Krishna and Maharaj Yudhisthira, bade them farewell and went away. Yudhisthira Maharaj, having heard that Krishna, his cousin, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was struck with wonder. Purport: after hearing the conversation between Narada and Yudhisthira, if one still has any doubts about Krishna's being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should immediately give them up. Asamshayam samagram. Without any doubt and without any defect, one should understand Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus surrender at His lotus feet. Ordinary persons do not know this, even after hearing all the Vedas. But if one is fortunate, although it may be even after many, many births, he comes to this conclusion: Bonam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate. On all the planets within the universe, the varieties of living entities, moving and non-moving, including the demigods, demons, and human beings, were all generated from the daughters of Maharaj Daksha. I have now described them and their different dynasties. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 7th canto, 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatunde Ve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyatyade Satarna. Lord Krishna is described as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not a easy position to have, in the sense that for ourselves to understand what it means to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is very difficult, because due to our conditioned nature especially, we have a limited conception of reality. Our perceptions are rather limited by our conditioned material senses. To understand how someone could be unlimitedly beautiful, how someone could have unlimited knowledge, how someone could have unlimited strength and power, unlimited fame, unlimited renunciation, is inconceivable, chintya. But by hearing from those who have experience of something about Krishna's unlimited nature, then we get some idea about Krishna. And then not only they're explaining to us about Krishna's unlimited nature, but they're also giving us a process by which we can gradually experience something about Krishna. It's not possible for the limited conditioned soul, or the limited soul, even in the liberated state, to know everything about Krishna, because Krishna is so inconceivable. But we should try to know something about Krishna. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is even considered to be an advanced book. Bhagavad Gita, the preliminary knowledge of the science of devotional service, although we may take it as something insignificant, it is actually a very profound book, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself. Even the first instruction in Bhagavad Gita, the fact that we're not this body in our present conditioned state, is practically inconceivable. To spend the day without any hankering, without any lamentation, would be quite an exciting day. In the mode of ignorance, we don't even realize what we're doing. We're not even conscious enough to know that that's what we're doing, hankering and lamenting. And in the darkness of ignorance, we think hankering and lamenting is wonderful. Life wouldn't be so juicy without it. As a matter of fact, people, they think contemplating the objects of the senses is life. And then choosing which sense objects we want and trying to obtain it, that's what endeavor is meant for. And without that, without developing lust and greed and destroying our enemies through anger, then life would not be worth living. That is the purpose of life. When Srila Prabhupada's godbrother was asked by the Marquis of Jetland from England here, Marquis of Jetland was the governor of Bengal. He came back to England. Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers had come to England, and they were preaching. The Marquis of Jetland met one of them, and he asked, "Can you make me into a Brahmin?" He asked Prabhupada's godbrother. So Prabhupada's godbrother said, "Yes, there is no problem. Simply you have to follow certain principles, like no meat eating, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication." The Marquis of Jetland, aristocratic gentleman, he said, "Impossible." Prabhupada was speaking to one social worker, minister in Melbourne, and Prabhupada was telling about the four regular principles. And his immediate statement was, "I like illicit sex. Me and my wife, we have great fun having illicit sex. How can we give it up?" Without any embarrassment, he's stating frankly that that is life. To think, contemplating the objects of the senses and developing attachment, from such attachment lust develops, then comes greed and anger, delusion, loss of memory, and then one's intelligence is lost. People don't think it's wrong, they think it's great. This is life, this is experience. Because when you're already fallen, there's no question of falling. You're already fallen. They're in ignorance, and therefore dharma iti ya manyate tamasavritah sarvatam vitaparitam va buddhisaparta tamasi. They think that religion is actually irreligion. If we tell them you should stop contemplating the objects of the senses, they think that this is sinful. These people are trying to repress their inner feelings and emotions. There is something inherently wrong with that. It leads to psychological problems. You have to do what you feel like doing, And that will actually make you a better person, a more psychologically stable individual. If you just bring out your feelings and you fulfill them, and then there'll be no more frustration or anger, and the world will be a better place to live in. And indeed, in one sense, in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Yat pada pankaja palasa vilasya bhakta kamashrayam grahitam grahatantik santa tavan narukta yatayo piruda tavan naras charno. What's the last line? That Shuto ganas tarunam bhajavasudevam. So just try to worship Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because if we factually become conscious of Krishna, if we're actually under the influence of the internal energy of Krishna, then our hearts will become melted. The hard knot of material desire will become slashed, and the result will be is that our spiritual senses will become awakened as the coverings become purified, and we'll be able to enjoy pleasure at every moment. But even the great soul, Shuto ganas tamarunam bhajavasudevam, tariktaya matayo piruda, even the great souls, the great sages, saintly persons, they try to stop Shutoganas. They try to stop the incessant flow of desires that are going through their mind. Often they fail, like Vishwamrita Muni. 60,000 years trying to restrain his mind and fix it on Brahman. Simply by hearing the ankle bells of one Apsara, he was defeated. And after being defeated by the Apsara, falling down in material existence for 120-something years, he again went through the process of meditation, and another 60,000 years passed by. Another Apsara came to break his meditation, and this time he became defeated because he became so angry that when he opened his eyes, fire came out of his eyes and burnt the poor Apsara to ashes. Luckily, she had medical insurance. Indraloka, they have good social welfare system. Again, he sat down in meditation, and it took another 60,000 years before he came to the platform of Brahman, before he actually became a Brahmana. We ourselves, we are not trying to go through such a process. Instead, we're trying to go through a process by which we rely upon Krishna for everything. Whatever we want, we should know that Krishna, he's the reservoir of everything. As it says in Bhagavad Gita, Tavan Arta Udapane Sarvata Topra. I forgot my. Yavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanitaha. That just like if you go to a pond or a well in India, sometimes in the villages, they have a well for washing their clothes, and they have a well for drinking water. They have different wells, and therefore you have to go to many wells to fulfill different purposes. But if you're fortunate enough to have a nice clean river near you, then you can simply go to the river and all your purposes are fulfilled. Similarly, Krishna, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can give us everything with no problem on his part. Just by his breathing, he's creating universes. So certainly, if we want something small, some desire to have fulfilled, if we approach Krishna, certainly he can fulfill it. Of course, the Vedic literature, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, try to tell us, yes, worship Krishna, Bhaja Vasudevam, but try to be conscious of what is desirable. You can go to the reservoir of everything, but you may ask for the wrong thing and wind up in a difficult situation. Actually, every living entity is constantly praying to Krishna, because it is said that Krishna is a super soul in everyone's heart, and not only from him remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness come, but also he's directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on machines made of material nature. So he senses our desire, just like one can understand the flavor of a flower by smelling it. Although it appears that we're not praying to Krishna, but actually everyone's praying to Krishna, because it's only Krishna who can answer our desires. So every desire is actually kind of prayer. But because people are in ignorance, they don't know, Nate vidu swartikatim hi Vishnu. They don't know that they should pray for Krishna. Darashya ye bahir artamanina. So they're praying for something insignificant. They think if their football team wins, their life has gotten better. As if their football team, they can call them at the time of death, and they'll protect them from the Yamadutas. They'll tackle the Yamadutas or something. The fact is that everyone is essentially in the material world acting out of fear. Because Bhayam Dvitiya Binevshitasyad Isharabatasya Viparyo Smriti. As soon as we turn our face away from Krishna, then we become fearful. And we should be fearful, because we're in a body that's going to destruct in a very short period of time and place us in some undesirable circumstances. No one's desiring death. No one's wishing for death, or very few people. We sing, happy birthday to you, although birthday was also not so pleasant, but we don't remember it. There was not a happy birthday, because as soon as you come out, immediately they slap you. They want you to cry. Welcome. Whack, whack. Get used to it, kid, because that is your existence. I'm going to slap you, and we just hand you over to someone else, your parents, and eventually they're going to wind up slapping you too. And at the time of death, Maya comes and slaps us again. She's always slapping us. Because, why? Krishna, Bahira Mukha, Bhogava Vanchitare, Nikatasta Maya, Tare, Japatiya Dare. As soon as we turn our face from Krishna, even for a moment, Maya slaps us. Of course, we take Maya's slap. Oh, she loves me. Therefore, at the time of death, we have to leave the body, and everyone sings at the death time, happy death day to you, happy death day to you. May you always take birth again, may you always take birth again. Otherwise, death should be very pleasant, because then we're going to get another birthday cake very shortly in some species of life. Therefore, as soon as one is involved in material nature, then one is usually afraid, and we take shelter of very insignificant things to allay our fear of death, old age, and disease, and eventually having to leave the body and going somewhere else. They take shelter of everything. Matirana Krishna Parataksatova Mito Vipadyeta Griha Ratanam. everyone's taking shelter, but because they don't know about Krishna, therefore they take shelter of things which have no significance. Prahlad Maharaj said, Balasya neha sharnam pitaro nashingha nartasya jagadam udavanto majatal now tat prividir ihanja shestas twad vidotanubritam twad upekshitanam. Everyone, the child is taking shelter of the parents, the sick person is taking shelter of the doctor and the medicine. We get into a boat or a car, we take shelter of the boat or the car or the airplane, hoping it'll protect us. But ultimately, it may or may not protect us, and even if temporarily it protects us, still we die anyhow. The only real protection is to take shelter of Krishna, but because we don't believe in Krishna, therefore we have this feeling that these things will protect me. And this feeling is what keeps us in material existence, one life after another. Because as long as we have this feeling that something in the material world is going to protect me, then we don't take shelter of Krishna. Draupadi had the feeling that if she tugged on her sari against Dushasan, that somehow or another she'd be protected. It wasn't until she put up her arms that Krishna and prayed to Govinda that Govinda came and actually protected her. He may have given her some kind of protection, the body itself, the strength, whatever intelligence Govinda was giving her. He was trying to help her according to her surrender. But when she actually fully surrendered, then Govinda actually came and helped her. People don't understand that Krishna is God because they don't surrender to Him. Therefore, He doesn't reveal Himself to them. And the material world is a struggle, karshati. Therefore, if we really analyze it, we have faith in so many things and a little faith in Krishna. But the more we put ourselves in Krishna's hands, the more we rely upon Krishna, the more we give Krishna the opportunity to show us how He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the more He can reveal Himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, that doesn't mean that we should climb onto a bridge and jump off and shout, Krishna! Our objective is not to inconvenience Krishna, but to take shelter of Krishna through the process of devotional service. Not to fulfill our desires, but to take shelter of Krishna to fulfill the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through his transcendental representatives, the Acharya system. If we take shelter of Krishna to fulfill that mission, then Krishna will certainly empower us and reveal Himself to us. And how does He reveal Himself? Partly He reveals the fact that, my dear spirit soul, you think you're your body, but actually this body is mine. You think you're the one who's moving the body, but I'm moving the body through the material nature. For Krishna to reveal Himself like that, then that is freedom for us. That is actual freedom from ignorance. It is not that we want Krishna to come before us dancing and we'll still remain in the material concept of life, trying to enjoy Krishna and the material world simultaneously. No, if we're actually surrendered to Krishna through fully utilizing tad buddhyas, tad atmanas, tad nishtas, tad parayanaha, gachantya puna avritim, jnana nirduta kalmashaha. When one's faith, when one's mind, when one's refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of all misgivings through complete knowledge, and thus proceeds straight on the path to self-realization. I don't have to tell pastimes, because this world is a pastime. And the main pastime is this ourselves wandering in this material world, an illusion, actually thinking that we're doing everything. At least we're identifying ourselves with the activities of this body. And we think somehow or another it's going on by our arrangement. So many things. But actually even every movement of this body is actually going on by Krishna's arrangement. Through his material nature, of course, we have our part of desiring, but if we desire to utilize this body in Krishna's service, under the directions of Krishna's representatives, then that desire will bring us to the spiritual world. That desire will bring us to the realization that actually I'm not doing anything. Then we won't be in anxiety anymore. We won't be in fear. We'll understand I simply continuously desire to serve Krishna under the guidance of his representatives, then I'll never be in the material concept of life again. I'll never become fearful. I'll never be subjected to lust and anger and greed and illusion, envy, madness. Naiva kinchit kromiti yuktamanyate tatvavit pashan shrinvan srishan jigran ashnanga chan swapan swasan pralapan vishijan grinan umishani mishanapi indiyarteshu vartantya iti daryan. A person who's in the divine consciousness, though engaged in seeing and hearing and smelling and touching while breathing and sleeping, always knows within himself that he does nothing at all. Because while engaged in speaking and evacuating, receiving, opening and closing his eyes, he knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. That is prasanatma. That is what we're preliminary looking for. That is one of the perfections of life. And it's one of the stages in pure devotional service that's achieved through pure devotional service. It's one of the stages in coming to the realization that Krishna is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that there's nothing for us to worry about. Ma suchaha. We don't have to make so many plans for this and that. Of course, we have to plan to spread the Sankirtan movement. We have to plan how to become Krishna conscious. But we don't have to make so many other plans. We simply have to make those plans. Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai. Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai. Shri Panchatattva ki jai. Shri Gauranitai ki jai. Then we can find out that Krishna is actually our Father, and we become joyful. Just like we are all part of the same family. We are all, I think in India, sometimes you go somewhere, they ask, what is your Gotra? Isn't that right? So we say we're Achyuta Gotra. That is our original ancestor. And when we realize that Krishna is actually our Father, Aham Pita Prajapita, that he is actually our Father, then we become joyful. And without that realization, we may externally acquire so many things by our apparent surrender to Krishna. Because Krishna is very kind. Even we make a show of surrender, even we try to surrender, but to get something materially in reciprocation. Not only gross things, money or women or wealth or whatever, but even to get prestige, adoration, or other things, generally speaking, we try to surrender to Krishna. In the background, we have certain material desires, wealth, position, some kind of understanding of reality so we can manipulate the material world or live in the material world more happily. Even we have some desire, Krishna will fulfill those desires. Krishna is very kind. But those desires will not make us happy. Fulfilling those desires will not actually make us happy. It's only when we feel Krishna's presence, when we feel ourselves to be a devoted servant of Krishna, when we begin to see everyone and everything in relation to Krishna, we become free from all anxiety. that we can feel some satisfaction and happiness. Because even we become the spiritual master of the universe, even we get all the wealth and followers and adoration, even we get liberation, it is all temporary. Arurukshar yen ye ravandakshavi muktamani nastvayasta bhavaravashura budaya. Arurukshar, what's it? Can padam padam no. Arurukshar Arurukshar Jangraya. Even we get liberation, which we don't even believe in perhaps. What does liberation mean to us? Liberation means that I have the weekend off and I can read Bhagavad Gita. I'm liberated from my job. Or I'm liberated because it's the Sunday feast and I'm liberated to eat as much prasadam as I like. So our conception of liberation is rather limited. Real liberation is freedom from all distress. Has anyone here ever experienced freedom from all distress besides going sleeping at night and becoming unconscious? That's why people like sleeping. Because when you're asleep, there's no distress. Or hardly any distress. If you're in deep sleep for a few moments, one becomes peaceful. But real happiness is freedom from all distress, and that's only possible as we become surrendered to Krishna, as we make Krishna the goal of our life, as we give up insignificant desires. Dhruva Maharaj, he wanted a kingdom greater than that of his great-grandfather. But that's considered tuchava. And he realized that when he met Krishna, when he was actually in Krishna's association, he realized that everything else was insignificant. So for me, that may be just so many words, but if we follow the process, instead of fixing our mind on so many insignificant things, whether as soon as generally it's, I need this girl or I need that boy, and then if I get that girl or boy, then we need a house, then we get, just like the Bhagavatam says. Then there's no time for anything else. Of course, we're devotees and it's always going to be, yes, this girl and myself, we're going to live happily ever after in Krishna consciousness, and Krishna is going to supply all the money. We won't have to worry about anything. We'll have unlimited kids and all the money will simply come. The house will, every year we'll get a bigger one, and the car will always be new. And all be because we're chanting japa so nicely that Krishna just sends everything. Because he says that. He carries what we lack and preserves what we have. So our money in the bank will always be preserved. Even the dollar falls, the pound falls, but our pound will be worth something. Because Krishna will preserve what we have. And whatever we need, we just chant japa and immediately Krishna sends it through a Vaikuntha airplane. Unfortunately, that's not exactly the way things work. And therefore, rather than spending our lives looking around, trying to see how we ourselves can make our own little kingdom of God here, with us in the center, because ultimately that's what it comes down to. Our imagination. The whole world is based on imagination. Our whole existence in the material world is based upon imagination. And sometimes we think when we follow our imagination, that becomes reality. But actually it's a different phase of dreaming, that's all. Generally we're dreaming and we look around, how I can become God, and we make we think this will help me become God, let me buy that. Let me acquire that. And then after we acquire it, we're still not God. So we're just one step, we got to go another step, another step, and another. And Maya is so good, she makes it seem all very real to us. She's expert in illusion. She's the greatest magician. And we go with another step and another. And at the end of the day, we're not any closer to becoming God than when we began. But still, we're not discouraged. So that's called madness. We're not at all discouraged. And now even when we leave the body and we're kicked out, we still come back and start the whole process again. We're so determined because we're so mad due to illusion. But the Bhagavatam is trying to wake us up. There is a God, and He's doing a much better job than we could do. Even if we could become God, we wouldn't be a very good God. Or even if we became a demigod and controlled the universe, but we still are not as good as Krishna. Therefore, to accept the real God, and instead of contemplating the objects of the senses, to look around and see what we can do for Krishna's service. If we want to contemplate things, then contemplate Krishna's service, and that way Krishna will gradually reveal Himself to us, and then we'll find out how wonderful the real God is, and how wonderful everything is when we're actually in Krishna consciousness. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions?